Hello, Free Plant family. It's April 2025. Let's see what's going on in the garden. It has been a few months since I have given one of my garden tours, and this time of year, spring, March, April, May, is always one of my favorite times to bring you through the garden because all the flowers are in bloom. The succulents have been rained on and they are looking lush. So come and see how the garden is looking and what has changed since the last time I've brought you around. I usually start my garden tours here in my front yard, which is actually a parkway. We have a lot of drought-tolerant plants and succulents. So what is a little bit unique about this garden is almost all the plants I got for free or for inexpensive. A lot of them were cuttings from other people's yards, such as a lot of my Senecio blue chalk sticks and my Aeonium voodoo. Those came from my mother's garden. Also the euphorbia sticks on fire, which add a lot of amazing color. These aloes as well came from my mother's garden. Some plants came from other sources, such as this agave blue flame, which had been in a neighbor's yard. It had been actually growing in a parkway like this size. It was getting a little bit too big. There was several of them, and they cut them out and put them on the side of the road with a free sign, and I happily took them. So what's interesting about my yard and a lot of yards, at least in the States anyways, we have these parkways. So we have a sidewalk, a public sidewalk. These parkways are technically city property, but homeowners are expected to maintain them. For me, since it is city property and you never know what you may be required to do, I didn't want to invest a lot of money into the area, but I also love gardening. So I figured this was an amazing space that I could use to fill up and add some color to the neighborhood. We are in Southern California, so yards really need to be drought tolerant. We do have some irrigation here, but I wanted it to be drought tolerant, colorful, and I like that it changes with the seasons. So some things were here already, like these larger bird in paradise. Those were all here, but this was really like a blank space when we first moved in. And to show you how much it changed, this was the yard when we first moved into the house, June 2020. And then a couple months later in October, you can see I started planting things up and planning out the garden. And then in July 2021, a little after a year of living in the house, the garden has been pretty much planted up, but nothing is filled in. There's a lot of visible soil. So obviously a lot of change in the space of just under 5 years. These bird of paradise were also in the parkway, but all of these wildflowers are blooming. Those were from seeds that I put down, and they just keep reseeding themselves every year. This is year 4. I haven't purchased any new seeds for there. And other plants such as the African daisies, those have just volunteered themselves. So you can see them here. This is one of the older ones. It's looking a little bit rough. Those seed themselves and volunteer all throughout the yard. So if you're interested in plants, we've got aloes. We have this agave that was bought on clearance from Home Depot. These are some little jelly bean succulents. Those were also put out by a neighbor on the side of the road, as were these type of aloes. The unfortunate part about when you get plants for free, you don't always know the name of the plant. So I'm not exactly sure which variety of aloe they are. Some I do know, such as this reddish one, that is an aloe cameronii, and then we have some other aloe arborescens up there, and then I have an aloe blue elf that is tucked away in there. We have a couple of those that came from a neighbor. Over here we also have, this is my agave attenuata, my foxtail agave. It has finally given up the ghost. It's time to cut that death bloom and cut this guy out of here. That happened with this one as well. The beauty of death blooms is that new little baby plants will start to grow out of the old plants most of the time. So everything is looking pretty lush. We did get a little bit of rain in March. Not as much rain as we had in previous years, but enough for these aeoniums to come out of dormancy. In the summertime, these do tend to close up and dry up. That's their way of protecting themselves from drought and from lack of water. In the spring, they just start to look amazing. I'm gonna move over to this other side of the driveway. The aeonium and the aloes are looking okay. I had to recently do some treatments on these aloes. We had some aloe mites, but they're looking good. And then, interestingly, these Senecio blue chalk sticks, they had grown and they had started overgrowing on the driveway, and someone was backing out of the driveway and completely ran over them, and they were just, I thought they were done for. I was like, well, oh well. But you know what's interesting about these? They actually start to look better when they are trimmed back, and then they start to get all this new fresh growth and not look so gangly. So I think that was probably a blessing in disguise. It's looking good. Over here on the corner, these African daisies are just so happy here. And again, the California poppies are looking good. We've had a lot of gopher issues here, which is why there's sort of less plants growing there. They didn't seed themselves as much. So the calendulas most definitely seeded themselves over here. And it looks like we do have some gophers that have taken over a little bit. So this is looking kind of lush, and the flowers haven't totally started blooming yet, but the calendulas, I know they're not native plants. They look really nice with the poppies. So if we turn back around, we've got this Pride of Madeira. This started as these things are other crazy volunteers that just really overtake the yard. I had another one in another part of the yard, and I took it out because it gets too big. I'm gonna let that bloom, and then we'll probably get rid of it as well. Although it does kind of hide the house nicely, so maybe we'll keep it. We'll move back along. Moving back, my path is looking much better because I finally really dug it out and put the gravel down. It was looking great and weeded, but right now it's not looking as great. But I have tried to make an effort to trim back my succulents. It's interesting, this is the first year where everything really filled in, from having started as a giant patch of dirt to now, as you see, everything's getting a little bit crowded in. So I do have to get better about cutting things back. I'm working at it. So here's some other aeoniums that I cut back and replanted. These rock purslane, they will turn into really beautiful magenta blooms. Cutting that back makes it look much better. Over here we've got some more cactus, a few more poppy volunteers, and that cactus there, that's a really nice torch cactus. Once it blooms, it will have this really beautiful bright pink bloom. And I have some native California opuntias. They're kind of hiding there, that I found broken at the university that I work at, and I planted it in there. Very dangerous plant, but it will look cool. And then of course a really pretty variegated agave, which is starting to get really big. We have a little euphorbia going crazy here. This is my euphorbia sticks on fire. This, I think it's called like a cattail euphorbia. That started as a small cutting that I found at Home Depot, and now it's like a giant bush. I need to cut it back, and it has really filled in. And now that I look at this yard, I kind of almost need to do some editing. Everything is just really way overly filled in. But it is funny, having started with a very dirt-laden yard to having one where you don't seed the soil. It's hard to know when to edit, but everything is getting a little bit overgrown. Now the beauty of this, of course, is that I can now share the love. Once I start cutting things back, I can leave my cuttings out on the side of the road. You can probably tell I live on a pretty busy road, and the same way that I got most of these plants for free, I can share these plants out with other people. So it's really nice. Another thing that returns year after year in the spring are the nasturtiums. And these just kind of take over a little bit. They are invasive plants. I do love the way they look, but I've been a little bit more proactive in pulling them out in some areas because they do tend to create all this shade for these plants underneath. And plants like these aeoniums, you know, they want a lot of sun and they're very tolerant of sun, but if they get used to being in the shade, once the shade is gone, they do sunburn. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. And they look good now. In a month or two, they'll start to look real ratty and yellow. But for now, it's adding a nice lush green element. My aeoniums, I recently published a video about death blooms, the ins and outs of death blooms, and a lot of my aeoniums are death blooming. Luckily that, you know, it's only 1 or 2 spikes out of the whole plant. The rest of the plant will continue on, and we will get some nice blooms out of it. It's just the way it goes with these plants. That is the natural circle of life for them. And then coming up, we also have some non-death blooms. These are the aloe blooms from these plants. And we have a lot of those coming out now too. This golem jade, it started as very small cuttings and it was kind of interspersed around some boulders, and you can't see the boulders anymore. The plants have gotten so big. It might mean I need to do some editing, but as we head towards the warmer months, that's something I would do in the fall when it gets cooler and not when it's hot and warm. Because if you cut these plants, right now they're all rooted, they're really happy. If you cut these plants back and don't have roots, they will probably just sunburn and cook up when the summer comes. This is sort of where I have a little bit of a dead garden. I just throw plants in here, little succulents that I'm not sure if they're alive or not, and see if they come back. And sure enough, a lot of them are coming back. And then again, these are they're kind of greenish aeoniums. They prefer this little bit more sheltered, protected area. They're pretty happy back here. The red aeoniums, they do a little bit better with the hot, direct sunlight. But having said that, like, this is another aeonium that was put out on the side of the road by my neighbor. I really liked it. It's a nice tall variety. It's in the shade most of the time, so it's looking pretty green. If I had that in the sun, it would probably look a little bit more like this one. I think this is kind of the same variety. Again, it's got a death bloom, but see how it's very red. So aeoniums, certain varieties, if they're in that direct sunlight, they will turn very, very red. And actually, here's a perfect example. So these get a lot of sunlight. They're this very dark red. I think this is an Aeonium Schwarzkopf, I believe is the type, the variety. But look down here. This is the same plant. It's getting in the shade. It's underneath this agave leaf, and it is very green. So that is one tip if you have an aeonium like a Schwarzkopf that you want to be bright red and it's looking very green, it's not getting enough light. Another trick with getting bright dark colors on your aloes or other succulents, so these are Aloe cameronii. This is that other aloe. There's another one that was in the other part of the yard I mentioned earlier. These are kind of greenish because they are rooted. They're a little bit more protected. If I wanted to get the really dark, deep red color that these can get, you can cut them and put them under stress. You can kind of remove the roots completely. Their leaves, they're a type of succulent really, so their leaves are full of moisture. They will survive, but they'll go into stress mode and they'll get this really nice, deep, rich color, and then they'll start to root. They'll take a drink, they'll turn a bit green, and then you can stress them out again. So this one is very red because I cut this one earlier. This was actually a pup to that one, which is green, a little bit more protected. It had a little pup. I cut it, I threw it here. It's getting some sunlight. So it's got that deeper red color because it's a little bit stressed as it starts to root. Moving back down my path, everything is a little bit overgrown. These are some kalanchoes that have gone to bloom, and they look amazing when they start to bloom, and then they start to look bad. You need to cut them back, cut the blooms off for them to look good. And everything else here, I should have nearly filmed this a month ago because everything here was looking so amazing, and right now it's got a lot of dropped flowers from this tree. This tree was in bloom, it rained, all the little flowers fell down, and it kind of looks bad. But once I clean that off, they'll start to look good again. And then this is my Echeveria lilac frost. You know, it's funny, it has gone through phases of looking bad and looking amazing. It was in my front right next to the sidewalk, and someone had pinched the top off because people are just rude. It was really happy here. And now it looks like it's getting, I believe it's called edema, when a plant that's used to not having a lot of water gets a lot of water all of a sudden, and it gets these little dots. So this is the kind of thing where I'm looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, this needs a lot of tidy up and maintenance. And of course the nasturtiums have come out. It's looking a little bit bad, but this is one area I'm really proud of. It's kind of really filled in, aside from looking a little bit dirty and covered in wildflowers. But everything here, yeah, has just really filled in. I have a video where I was putting in all those aeoniums. It's finally like a year and a half later, they've finally really filled in. This is an aloe blue elf. One of the very first videos I featured on this channel was about this plant. And it's funny, you'll see me planting this plant and how much the yard has changed. This agave blue Americana, it's absolutely huge right now. And that came from a listing I saw on Facebook Marketplace where someone said, hey, come and dig the plants out of my yard. And I have a ton of these blue Americanas. There's one, there's right there. There's a few scattered around. These plants produce so many little pups, so they're kind of invasive, which is why the person wanted me to cut them out. But what a showstopper plant. The color's amazing. It requires 0 water. You have to be very careful of the spikes. They're pretty nasty, but I mean, to me, it's the centerpiece of the yard. So I'm really proud of that plant. And eventually it will death bloom and possibly get way too big and we'll have to dig it out. And that's just the way it goes with plants and gardens. I'm going to move it back down this path. Please ignore the pile. Instead of looking that, let's focus here instead on this succulent bed that I put in here. I think I started putting this in here in November. The aeoniums are starting to impede a little bit on this garden, and I actually made a video of putting this little succulent tapestry, succulent bed in here, and already I just haven't edited that video. That's what I do. I shoot these videos and then they sit on my computer for a long time. But I can already tell that this aloe is starting to fall over on it and I need to pull that out. And then, but everything else is like, I'm really happy. The sedum is finally growing in. A lot of these little echeverias are looking good. It's interesting. You can see this part obviously gets a lot more sunlight than this part. This is a little bit more protected and a little bit more shady. Got some of these bigger echeverias in there. They're looking good. These ones are a little bit more colorful. They get a little bit more sunshine. And because they just get a little bit more sun, it's going to take a little longer for the sedum to fill in. This is always a fun little area, and I've had neighbors say how much they love this little succulent bed. This log, you used to be able to see it, but the aeoniums in their very lush, non-dormant capacity are just so happy. These are aeonium kiwis. These are that kind of more greenish aeonium. I'm not exactly sure which variety, but they are really filled in, really lush. I have to say, I just love this corner here. It looks so good. Now, hiding over here, here's when the senecio don't get as much light, they start to go a bit leggy. And hiding over here, here's what I'm talking about. Hiding over here is our fairy garden. It looks like there's a fairy in the fairy garden. So the fairy garden continues to grow. It's looking good because all the plants are filling in the springtime. We love it. Lots of people come and play here. A few things have gone walkies, but most of the time it's looking good. I might try to take away the dirt and like actually put DG down here so it's a little bit less, you know, like things start to get lost in the dirt a little bit. That is the main front yard, the front yard that's on the street. Everything here is totally overgrown. It's like one of those projects I need to do. But I do want to show you one big major change that we have up on the Hillside garden. There's Waffles, our cat. Up here, this little corner is looking a little bit overgrown, and I've got some of my plants in pots. We have filled in this pot that has the aeonium sunburst. One of the sunbursts went into death bloom, but I've added a little Fred Ives, my Organ pipe cactus, which is contentious. Some people say it's not an organ pipe cactus. It continues there. You can see we have a little bit of gopher action going on. And then up here, where we had a lot of trees, and now it has become my little meadow garden. And I just keep adding to it. Keeping on top of the weeds has been very difficult, but we had some of these wildflower seeds last year, and after the rains, they have fully come out and they are looking really good. I've been adding some little footsteps so that I can get up here, and I have started to add some native California plants back there, and what they tend to do is they just start to really get big. So it's great because it's really starting to fill in this space, which 6 months ago just looked like a dirt pile. Now these are annuals, so they will go away. But right now we have our California poppies and our calendulas and our beautiful California lupins. They are just looking magical. Everything is looking lush. The rains have helped, but now it's getting a little bit dry, so I might have to sprinkle a little bit of water on there. Up here is another new thing. We've started to put in what will eventually be a hedge. So these are pea bushes, and I'll slowly turn around here. If you look in our yard, we have these pea bushes. They were these tiny little bushes that were here when we bought the house 5 years ago. They've gotten huge, and then they drop seeds, and I don't know if you can see those. They just like throw down these volunteers. So rather than buying plants to create a hedge on this wall, now that we pulled all the trees down, I have been pulling out those volunteers and planting them here along the wall. And one thing I think that will be good for is we want to keep it, we don't want it any higher than the wall. We want to keep them small, but these plants seem to be so drought tolerant. These plants are not on irrigation. We've never really watered them. They just love it in this area. So I think the hedge will do really well. And then I've also started planting some cactus. I have a barrel cactus. I want to add a couple more rule of threes, maybe add a few more boulders. I've put in an agave, and this may be something I regret, but I had another blue agave Americana and I added it up here. We will see. Go further here. Here's where I've got my native California plants. This is a jumping cactus. I found some pieces broken on the side of the road. I thought that would be a good idea. I actually do have regrets about growing this. The reason there's a piece here is because I was trying to pull out the weeds and that stuck to me, and that's why they're called jumping cactus. Those spines like attach to you so quickly, and it's really hard to pull them out of your skin. It's a very clever cactus. It knows how to move itself. So this is a buckwheat, and bought it as a really small thing, and now it's grown really huge. And my favorite thing about this is it has actually dropped so many seeds. Not all of them, but a lot of the plants down there are the little babies of this plant. And later in the summer, it gets these really cool, snowy, like white blossoms. Just so pretty. Native plant, requires almost no water. I also have a salvia. I can't remember which variety that is. A little variety of ceanothus. We have our white sage, and we have our Matilla poppy. It's not yet season for it to get its fried egg flowers. But almost all of these plants I bought from our local botanic garden, which specializes in native plants. I've also purposely put them on the hillside because these are plants that do really well with erosion. Matilla poppy, the salvias, and the buckwheat are known for helping with erosion. So obviously this is a hillside, it's covered in soil. I just hate these like grass weeds, so I've been pulling them out. The danger of that, of course, like, so here you go, you know, it's here, the soil's not falling down. I'm hopeful that eventually I will cut down on the weeds and just have these native California plants that will hold in the hillside, attract native pollinators, and this hillside will look amazing. So it's a slow project. My neighbors probably see me out here all the time when they're walking their dogs like, what is she doing? But we're getting there, and just having all the blooms now finally, making me really happy. I also have a little manzanita tree planted in there. This will be an interesting space to see how it changes throughout the time of the year, and then also over the years as those plants mature and get even bigger. Here's the hill from below. I've got my raised bed, which has a little solar irrigation going on. My broccolinis are gone to flower, but these taste really good. I'm just gonna eat one right now. We got some little sunflower volunteers and got some tomatoes, zucchini squash, more broccolinis. I need to add some more new soil to this. And then here from below, there you can see the buckwheat. I'm gonna zoom in. That's what their flowers look like. So certain times of the year, this plant is just covered in those little really pretty white blossoms. But it's amazing, I planted a lot of these native plants pretty far away from each other, and they just take over. They get really big. That's the idea. You don't need to buy a lot of them in order to fill a whole yard. And then back here, this is my sunburst aeonium. Say goodbye. It has decided to death bloom. And what's interesting is it had all these little pups, and I thought, oh, I'll cut them off, but the pups have decided to death bloom as well. So I think maybe my tip for people, I had cut some of the pups off and replanted them, and they're doing just great, is when you see a plant like this that you know will eventually death bloom, cut the pups early, because I have a feeling the signal to death bloom went to all the other pieces within the plant, and that plant looks really cool, but it is gonna be gone. So it was very happy here for several years, and I'll probably replant something else similar. But look at the colors at this time of day. It's the afternoon. We've got our euphorbia sticks on fire, which is nice and coral color. That sunburst is yellow. We've got the very cool green of the sage, purple flowers, and our Senecio blue chalk sticks. I love it. And then we'll just sneak past this fence. Here's this little succulent bed I featured in another video recently. Lots of little succulent cuttings that I had saved over the years. The sedum is really filling in. It looks good. It's pretty happy here. Underneath the boulders, there's another really pretty sage up there. I believe that one's called Dara's Choice Salvia. Our rock rose, which is a Mediterranean plant. Ceanothus is in bloom. We're kind of training it to go down over that retaining wall. This is my other native garden. Not all of it's native, as the rock rose was Mediterranean. And this is a Salvia microphylla, Salvia hot lips. They're not native plants, but they are very drought tolerant. We got some other things here that aren't native plants, but look at this Ceanothus. There's two different varieties. There's Yankee Point, which is more of a ground cover, and then this giant one, I can't remember the variety. It has become huge. Moving along, we've got our other little succulent bed, which is a little bit stressed. We've got another Cleveland sage and this other rock rose. They drop a lot of leaves. I think it kind of stresses this succulent bed out a bit, but I mean, the colors look amazing. It's the afternoon, so my ice plant, which I usually hate, they're not the best, but look at those flowers. They're closed up. They were open all day. They close in the afternoon. I mean, you gotta love spring. Oh, we've got a lot of color here going on. This is a different kind of buckwheat. These are volunteers from a red flowering buckwheat, which is endemic to the Channel Islands that are off the coast of where we live. We bought the plant. We bought two of those plants. The original plant went through its phases and eventually died, but these ones are little volunteers, so the plant lives on. And then we've got some fruit trees. We've got our tangerine and our Meyer lemon. We've got a banana and a fig tree. Our little fire pit area, which I have a whole video about how we created this. It's looking pretty good in the afternoon. I could show you a little bit of the propagation station, but it's kind of a mess right now. I'll show you the plants. They're looking very cute. My Greenovia Mona Lisa is in its final little death bloom. Looks very cool, but everything's looking pretty happy around here. This is my little collection. of plants. And then here's my little bit less of the succulent plants and more of our moss and our greenhouse plants. And I have a lot of begonias that I need to deal with that are not in their happiest state. But there's always a project. So here's how I spend my free time. And that is it. That is the garden in April 2025. I know these tours go on for a very long time, but hopefully you enjoy learning about the plants that I have in my yard and where I got them and how to care for them and how to fill a garden just like this for little to no money. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments below. I love answering your questions. Of course, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok, and don't forget to subscribe.